welcome back to the Connect Network TV right here on the CW. So, she is not a therapist, but a dating coach and a podcast host that is showing you how to allow your anxiety to assist you. Perhaps you saw her on the Tamron Hall show, or you're one of her nearly 1 million followers on IG. It's time for an unfiltered experience like no other. Please help me welcome to the show, Sabrina Zohar.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. We're excited to have you here. I'm loving your whole setup, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to create like my inner child's dream studio to connect back. And so that includes everything pink and plants, of course.
I'm so with you. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, we are so thrilled to have you here this morning as our influencer of the week. And you are the perfect guest because you have achieved many of the milestones that most creators, plus micro influencers and so on, hope to achieve, like national press, a top podcast, a large engaged following. So let's just start there. How did you really like build this brand of yours, and how did it just completely blow up?
So, truthfully speaking, none of this was ever something that I thought was going to happen. And it really started. I lost my dog a couple of years ago. And when that kind of transpired, and I realized, like, what am I doing all this for? So, I have a clothing company called Software. And I just thought, okay, I'll be a business owner and I'll just kind of run of the mill, do this. And a friend of mine came to me and was like, man, you coach people on the side, you help people with their business, but you always talk about dating. I really think you should start something. And at the time, I had my limiting beliefs. I genuinely didn't believe anyone would care to hear about what I had to say or really, frankly, even be interested. And so I started on TikTok and I said, all right, I'll throw this video up and let's see what happens. And it started to take off from there. One video turned into two, turned into three. And then in January of 2023, I was like, all right, let's try. Like, I'll do a podcast. And I just did a podcast. And then in March, I started my Instagram. And I really truthfully just show up as authentically as I possibly can and try to give perspective shifts that are different. And I think what really helps me is that, like, I was in the trenches. So I think a lot of people say, oh, how do you know what it is that I'm feeling? And it's like, well, that's how I can relate to the audience, is because I was that girl. I'm just on a different pace in my journey than some other people are.
Mhm. Yes. And this is incredible because this is all because of social media. So you use anxiety to fuel your own healing journey. And it has been quite a journey. So tell us about that, because now you've turned your story into a business with your now top rated podcast, which I love that you incorporated podcast marketing, because I also utilize my podcast, Slay Your Day, to connect with my audience deeper. So for you, why is podcast so important?
To me, do the work is it really epitomizes everything that I've done for myself. And I felt very alone. I felt like I was on an island and that nobody really understood what I was going through. And it wasn't that. It's not like I was some snowflake that was having an experience nobody else had. Like, I have anxiety. Welcome to the world. But how it manifested from childhood traumas and all the experiences that I had, and really where that anxiety started to hold me back was my own limiting beliefs and the ways that I was showing up for myself, or lack thereof. So when I started the podcast, it was really an opportunity for me to share very authentically those parts of myself. And it's a double-edged sword because I love the podcast and it fuels me and it gives me that jolt that I need. But with good also comes people that you're raw, you're exposed, you're out there. And in
Mhm.
this whole journey, I had to take the good with the bad. And it really allowed me to work on those limiting beliefs, to work on my self esteem, and to remind myself, like my mama always said, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. So it really allows me to show up authentically and then embrace and encourage other people to do the same, so that they have a place they can come to listen about anxiety, dating, and truly how to actually work through these issues, and not just throw a bumper sticker slogan or a quick fix on it that realistically isn't actually going to get you the results that you need to have if you really want to move forward from all of this.
So good. And so let's get into some relationship talk, because we all know marriage, dating, especially dating, and growing together. The love and the butterflies can be seasonal if you're not putting in the everyday work to keep the flame going. So let's talk going from dating to marriage with this conversation, and start with texting and dating with anxiety, because that's one of your focal points. And I can't even imagine what it's like today with technologies, but How is it affecting relationships and anxiety as well?
Oh, I that's one of my favorite things to talk about, or specifically texting and dating, because I was her. I was the girl that would stop dating guys if they didn't text me every single day. And really what ends up happening is it has nothing to do with the text. I think if you have any kind of understanding of like human psychology and behavior, we can look and say it's what the text represents. And oftentimes what happens with technology being incorporated into dating is it allows you to create this false sense of intimacy with this person. You think you are so much closer. You really think you're getting to know this person. All the while, you're creating a tone of what you want. You are creating this fallacy and this fantasy of what it is that you want to happen here. That's why oftentimes we'll see that grave disconnect of, but they were amazing via text. And then I showed up in person and they were boring. And so oftentimes we find, like, at least for me, I would not be with my current partner if I allowed the anxiety around texting to take over. Because what happens was when we had our first date and we had our fun, and then the next day, and when I didn't hear from him the day after, I instantly started to spiral of creating narratives. Oh, he doesn't like me and he must not be into me, because everything on the internet says if he's not texting you every day, he's not that into you. But then what I also had to realize was, well, wait a minute, how's that helped me in the past? Text can be automated. Somebody can send you a text in the morning while they're laying next to somebody else, or while
Mm.
they're in the shower. Like, any of that can be done from the comfort of someone's own home. But really, what I started to look at was, well, how else is this person showing up for me? So if I'm going to stop dating somebody because I'm so anxious and so uncomfortable in my own feelings and emotions, because I'm so scared I'm going to lose this person and lose that connection. So instead, I want to text, because that is just trying to gain safety. And at the end of the day, while I can have space and compassion and hold that space for these people, we have to look and say, but how much is this helping versus how much is this hurting my dating experience? And we have to look at more than just texting. But there are so many people that will literally cut somebody off simply because, well, they went 24 hours without texting me, without really looking how else somebody can show up for you by their time spent, the way that they talk to you, the conversations that you have, and how often maybe they call and FaceTime. And so I think the texting has really muddied the waters, and it allows anxiety to really take over and not really to see what's actually happening in front of us. Is there genuinely a threat that I now need to feel like I'm losing this security? Or is this just a projection of my childhood that I'm now putting on this person? I have no idea who they are and I just want to seek safety.
Yes. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about anxiety in marriage. What can that look like?
I mean, anxiety in marriage can show up in a multitude of different ways. Like, I've seen some people that, just because you're married doesn't necessarily mean you married the right partner for you. And so I think a lot of people, that's kind of the whole adage of, it's not about, oh, I'm only anxious because I don't have somebody. No, no, no. The work starts when you do get into a relationship, because that person's only going to trigger every single shortcoming of you that you have. Every childhood trauma, that person's probably going to trigger, because there is no closer relationship to our caregivers than our romantic relationships. And so when we see anxiety in marriage, I have a client and she's been married for 20 years and she's never been more unhappy. Her partner
Mm.
doesn't make her feel seen, heard, and understood. Her partner doesn't validate her emotions. Her partner is very dismissive of her and super disrespectful. Now her son is starting to act in that way. So the anxiety and different aspects of anxiety can show up in a marriage, because unfortunately, if we don't actually tend to the root cause of that anxiety and what's causing that fear of the future, which is all anxiety is a fear of the unknown, it's a fear of the future. If we don't really understand where that's coming from and the coping mechanisms in order to handle it, yeah, sure, anybody could go get married, right? I could go meet somebody and just walk down the altar. But does that actually mean that that's somebody for me? Does that mean that that person's created a safe space for me to grow? And does that actually mean that I feel secure in this relationship? Or am I still coming with my anxiety, doing anything I can to keep this attachment, but not actually hold on to a connection?
So good, so good. And I feel like this gets so much deeper. So I want to thank you so much for pulling up with us today on the Connect Network TV right here on the CW. So where can people find you and keep up with you, your course, and your podcast?
Thank you guys for having me. It's so much fun to be able to have different conversations. So sabrinazohar.com, Do the Work podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. On TikTok, sabrina.zohar, and on Instagram, sabrina.zohar, and Do the Work podcast. So plenty of places to get your fix, and there's so much content out there depending on whatever the poison that you're picking.
Amazing. Well, Sabrina, we'd love you to tap into our hot topics after the break. Amy is joining us. You won't want to miss it. Are you cool with that?
Let's do it.
All right, amazing. Well, Connect family, we are tapping into influencer unlocked and social media uncensored after the break.
Hey, beautiful people, it's Major Mr. This is why I love you. And you are watching the Connect Network TV.